So on the back of the session about 100 Days in Appalachia, I really wanted to focus some attention on what else that reporters can do in the region off their own bat, right? So if they're not hired by a traditional newsroom, but they're smart and they're savvy and they've got something to say and they've got issues to present that they want to dive into, and they're just great reporters. And so it was terrific, as I was searching around that subject, to meet Lindsay Gilpin. Lindsay, I believe, has just been brought on board to work with 100 Days. So you'll be seeing a lot more of Lindsay in the near future. But Lindsay, give us your brief CV. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you up to this point here in Morgantown.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. So I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and oh, awesome. Yeah. And I went to U of L there, and then I went to Chicago at Northwestern for grad school and started focusing on environmental journalism. And I've most recently been out west for the past couple of years. I was in LA for about a year, and then at High Country News, which is a magazine based in Paonia, Colorado, rural Colorado, where I really kind of honed in on investigative reporting and environmental reporting. They do a lot of work on public lands, energy, water, a lot of that. So I had a fellowship there and did a big investigative piece that was a Livingston Award finalist on sexual harassment of female employees in the National Park Service. And so after working on that, and kind of after the election really in general, I decided to move back home to the South. And you can fight me later if you think Louisville's not the South. And because a lot of people try to get me on that. But I came home to really report on environmental issues in the South and how they relate to social justice and culture and the economy and politics. And so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today.
What was the hook as someone who was living around the country? I think there's a lot of people here, Courtney and some other reporters that we know that are kind of back and forth between Appalachia and Chicago or LA and New York. What was the hook for you that made the move something you wanted to do? Was it personal? Was it professional? What was it?
It was a combination of a lot of things. So High Country News is a regional magazine, and I always thought as an environmental journalist I needed to go out west, and I think it really behooved me to go out west and report there for a few years. But kind of like with the 100 Days conversation, I saw this huge gap in the narrative, especially about environmental issues in the South. And after the election happened, I realized that I kind of had a choice. I could go back to California, like I was offered to report for High Country News and try to freelance out there, or I could come back here and probably have to work a lot harder to find outlets that would take stories about things going on in West Virginia, in Kentucky, in the Deep South, about not just environmental issues, but how people in the region were kind of adjusting after the election, and to counter the narrative that we were just talking about, that was happening when the entire country was trying to figure out not just Appalachia, but the rural South, because, right, it's like our fault that this happened. So I wanted to dig into that. I wanted to figure that out. And I think that environmental journalism, sometimes, like, that phrase is hard to talk about because environmental issues, whether it's water or agriculture or sea level rise, climate change, everything, all of that, that's all happening in this region. And so that kind of led me to start what is up here, which is I came back to freelance, and I realized that I had all these ideas and I couldn't report them fast enough for other outlets, or some of them might not be taken. So I started a newsletter called From Tiny Letter, which is out of MailChimp. And so basically, it's really basic. Like you just come up with a name. So I came up with Southerly. I used one of my friend's photos of a bunch of bourbon barrels as the background. There's not much you can do with it except for just, I decided to come out with it every week, every Thursday. And I would just write about what I thought was important and what I thought was great journalism coming out of the South or about the South. I really looked at long-form journalism because that's one of my passions, and in-depth and investigative reporting. And then I write an editor's note. And most of the time this is stuff like, it's been things that I've pitched that never went anywhere, or just ideas that I had, or things that pissed me off that the mainstream media was covering. So I write something every week, and then I link to stories, and that's actually kind of how I found out about 100 Days. Originally was like right when it came out, I was like, oh, this is so awesome, and so I put it in my newsletter. So that's kind of how I've filled my time besides freelancing since I've been back.
And I don't want to be imagining something was fake, but was the impetus for Southerly because there weren't outlets that were sufficiently interested in environmental justice issues? Is that framing it correctly?
Yeah, it's really, I saw a huge gap in environmental reporting in the South, in that most Southern publications are about food or about culture. They're always about race because it has to be about race. Sometimes they're not appropriately covering race and racism in the South. But a big part of it was like you have, like a lot of food magazines, a lot of lifestyle magazines, a lot of we like sweet tea. And I mean, that narrative is still just like rolling, And so there's Bitter Southerner, which is really awesome, but they don't do a lot of specifically environmental issues, right? There's Scalawag, which is a great publication, and they're more social justice. So that's fantastic. I kind of looked at those two, and I realized that I don't have the funds to start a magazine right now. That's my goal, is to turn Southerly into a magazine, kind of like I was talking about with High Country News, where it's a regional publication about environmental issues. And how people relate to their environment in this region. And so basically this newsletter is my weekly reminder that there's a huge gap and I'm trying to fill it. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And so far it's worked pretty well. I've got 400, 500 subscribers in 6 months. So I've been
Who are they? What sort of people?
Yeah, it's been interesting because at first it was all journalists that were reading it, which I thought was great. But last week, I had a guy email me, and he was like a 65-year-old retired government employee in rural Virginia. And I was like, oh my, this is it. These are the people that, because I am really active on Twitter, and I'm getting a lot of feedback on there. And I just made a Facebook page, and I know that I'm getting the millennial journalist vibe, because and I'm trying to walk the fine line that there is between not just speaking to frankly a lot of environmental publications, right, like Grist or what else, Grist is a great example. It's just preaching to the choir, and I don't want to do that. My goal is to find the 60-year-old retiree in rural Virginia, and people like me, journalists in New York. I've had people across the country say that they're reading it even though because they're from the South, or their family's from the South, or they just don't know anything about it because, as we were saying in the last session, it's just the same narrative all the time. And I think that's even more true for climate change reporting in the South, because it's mostly about the fact that there's climate deniers here, and there's much more to it than that. There's a lot more nuances in every specific region. The South is not just the South, right? It's Appalachia, and it's the deep South, and it's the Low Country, and it's Louisville, and it's Atlanta. And so I think that that's really important. I'm really interested in Tiny Letter. Courtney does one too that I get that's great. What's the outreach strategy? How would that reach new people? Is it all social media shares? How is that working for you? How do you get new eyeballs to that you aren't emailing directly? Yeah, it's interesting because Tiny Letter is kind of limiting in a way where you can't do as much as MailChimp, their newsletter platform, and people just have to go to this page, which you should all go to, tinyletter.com/Southerly, and sign up. And so Twitter has been my main form of getting people. Like I said, I just made a Facebook page, and that's actually helped because I think those audiences are so different, and I didn't immediately think that when I started doing this, and I've gotten a lot of, I think, a different kind of group of subscribers from Facebook. And but other than that, it's really just kind of directly sending out that link, which it kind of makes it difficult, but I'm curious to kind of, if it grows, and I hope it grows, how to, transcend Tiny Letter.
Well, yeah.
What's your range again? What's your range, and then I know I'm familiar with High Country News. Making this very interesting blend of environmental coverage, but it's also very rooted in narratives of place.
Yeah, and that's what really I'm trying to do is how communities interact with their environment. So what I consider the South is all the way up to West Virginia, Kentucky, and then through the Deep South and down to Florida. And so I am very careful, I'm still trying to hone the way I explain it, honestly. I a lot of times describe it as talking about ecology, justice, and culture in the South, because I think ecology is a really good way to explain things that have to do with land and water and how people interact with their environment without the connotation of environmental journalism that gets a lot of the time.
Dana, the work that Dana's doing in the 100 Days Project has demonstrated the importance of vertical broadcasting. I remember you said that term to me a year ago, and I was like, oh, whatever, I don't even know what it is. But it's like, it's starting with web or blog content like this, and that gets picked up by someone else, and it's vertical. Is that one of your goals and ambitions? Do you think it's possible? Have you seen any traction in using Southerly as like a vertical part of the chain?
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested. I think what we were talking earlier today, a few of us, about partnerships and nonprofit media and public broadcasting and how effective that can be. And if I started this as a magazine, I would want it to be a nonprofit. And because I really believe in nonprofit journalism right now in particular, and how effective that could be, and independent journalism. And so I think that kind of that idea of partnering and that vertical, as well as really building a group of contributors that are from this region and that live here, that know it, that aren't parachuting in. I've had a lot of people actually email me, journalists, to be like, I'd love to write for this, and I'm like, I don't have any money, and I wouldn't ask you to do that yet, but that's a goal of mine. And photographers and videographers, documentary filmmakers, I love the idea of kind of expanding in it that way, and paying people for it eventually.
Any other questions for Lindsay while she's here? So that was a thinly veiled attempt to say, she's really smart, y'all should meet her, right? So this is someone that's like reporting about the region, that is trying to build something new, thinking about a magazine, looking to meet photographers and writers and videographers. Ringing any bells? Right, so thank you, Lindsay, for that. And I'm assuming Lindsay will be around a little bit more now that she's doing a bit of work with 100 Days. Oh, awesome, we got a question. Thank you, Megan.
Hi. You rock.
Thank you. So do you.
You talked to us a little bit about, it's so brave to just say no to a big offer, like California or Colorado or whatever, and to make the choice to go out on your own and tell stories that people aren't telling. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that personal experience for you and, your day-to-day? Is it what am I doing today? Or is it I am in this, and
yeah.
And what about finding community in doing that? I mean, that's a really brave and hard thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm making it sound like I just did it really well, but I've been living with my parents for the past 6 months trying to freelance in Louisville. So it's been incredibly hard. I knew that a big part of my heart was out west, and I loved it out there, and I thought that I was going to stay out there longer, but really the election and kind of the personal feelings I had after that made me realize that my feeling was that I belonged back here. And so, yeah, it was a huge decision, and it was really hard, and I decided to full-time freelance, and it was a lot of pitching. Luckily, really, this has worked in my favor, is that everyone's trying to understand this region. And so when I pitch stories, they're probably not stories, especially environmental ones, that people are sending. So I wrote one about the spread or lack of the spread of wind energy in the Southeast recently, which was something that they were like, what? We've never even thought about that. It was for Inside Climate News. And Outside Magazine I've been writing for, because they are trying to understand kind of how people relate to public lands, or the lack of public lands in the South, in Appalachia in particular. And so it's been incredibly difficult. And I think that I went to graduate school, and most of my colleagues from there are on the coasts. and are always at happy hours and always at like in newsrooms and doing these cool events and all this time. And so it's really interesting to kind of like juxtapose those experiences. And also freelancing is super lonely and super, especially, I mean, I'm in my hometown and I know a lot of people and I have my family there and everything, but freelancing, I think especially around here is like, and after the election in particular, not having a newsroom to kind of go back and forth with is difficult because it's kind of, I mean, I spend a lot of time just like trolling the internet and very local newspapers for this newsletter. And so I think that this passion project has helped that transition because I am the happiest when I'm doing this newsletter and I'm not making a dime off of it. And I don't even know like how far it will go or anything. But the feedback I've gotten kind of keeps me going in that way. So, yeah, I hope that answers it.
Glynis, I know you got something to say.
So you're going to do this 100 days thing now, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to continue to do that as well?
Mm-hmm.
And I invite you to also, of course, work with OVR as well. I think we could together, kick some ass.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Nice. I knew good things would happen if Glennis got a microphone. That's awesome. Did you know OVR? You're familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Glennis.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's good. What's that? A high value resource. I may describe this. It's a collection of you got it. A collection of reporters across the region. It's a partnership between a few different public broadcasting newsrooms. Is that right, Glennis? To basically try and cover Appalachia in a better way. Energy,
It's fantastic.
health. Yeah. Okay, so, man, I love bringing smart people in front of someone. It's just good. Okay, so thank you to tinyletter.com/Southerly. If Lindsay doesn't get like 150 more subscribers today, I'm going to chase you all tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
And,
okay.
and please email me, like, if y'all are working on anything, if you just want me to put, like, I like to link to people in the newsletter and shout out names and stuff. I really try hard. I shouted out this conference in it. I don't know, like, if anybody I came from that, but I like to do that because I think that is incredibly important right now, and I want to be a part of different communities of people trying to do cool shit in this region. And so, excuse my language, I'm sorry. And so, yeah, so please share it and send me emails.
Awesome. Lindsay Gilpin, ladies and gentlemen, round of applause. And I will say, Lindsay, we had a session fall over. There was something totally different was supposed to happen here. And I went to Lindsay 10 minutes ago and said, would you mind? So it's great. So in 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to meet on the video wall, the huge, big, enormous space there, where we're going to see a photo exhibition by some of West Virginia's and Appalachia's best photographers. And then we're going upstairs to drink some beer and hang out. Please come up there. They've been waiting there for us all day. Come and have a drink with us, meet some friends, talk, chill out. And Mike Costello, Emily Hilliard, and Courtney Ballestier are going to do a fascinating session about storytelling and Appalachian food. So go and watch the photo exhibition and then head upstairs for a drink.